Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings to all of you who have come here today to remember Veronica Reed. A special greetings and condolences go to the royal husband and Veronica's children, Dana and Ron, grandchildren, August and Kaylee, and to the royal's daughters, Cindy and Kelly, who at the last moment couldn't be with us. Stephen also could not be with us, and granddaughter Aurora, who are with us this afternoon. I'm Desiree Mays. I'm a friend of Leroy and Veronica's. I feel very honored to have been invited by Leroy to take part in this lovely ceremony of words and music. We could not remember Veronica without music. I first met Veronica when I was lecturing at the Metropolitan Opera and she was working with the Met's education program. I remember her as always being supportive, warm, and enthusiastic. Then she and Leroy moved here in 2010, and I became friends with Veronica and Leroy, one entity. Their two names always ran together, a wonderfully close partnership. Veronica was born in Boston in 1941, but grew up in Albuquerque. She was actually a graduate of UNM right here. She married and lived with her first husband, Bruce McMullen, for 19 years in Hanover, New Hampshire. When they divorced, she moved to New York to pursue her career as an opera stage director, and it was in New York she met and married Leroy, a bass soloist at the Metropolitan Opera. On Leroy's retirement, they moved to Santa Fe and Albuquerque. Veronica's exciting career was in the world of opera. She directed many opera productions across the U.S. She worked as an actor, a dramatic coach, and a designer over the years. She was executive assistant to the Met's Opera Guild program in education. She was a full writer member of ASCAP Music Publishers, writing English versions of many operas, one of which, Offenbach's Le Mariage de la Rose Volontaire, was performed at the Manhattan School of Music and conducted by Santa Fe's own John Crosby. That was the East Coast part of her life, and more on this later. Let's now have some music, and let me introduce you to an outstanding group of players from New Mexico's leading orchestras and led by violinist David Felberg. Thank you all for coming here and being together this one time to honor Veronica. Thank you so much. The ensemble will play first for you Albinoni's Adagio, and following the music, Dr. Karen Abram, head of UNM's Alumni Department, will speak.
As music is a language to the universe and our soul, Veronica was the music to our heart. Leroy, I can't tell you how humbled I am that you asked me to reflect upon Veronica's life. And I thank you ever so much. You know, Veronica was just a special gift to life and to the world and to each of us. And all of us have our own stories about Veronica and the memories, shared memories, and whatever. But what I do know, that in our memories and our stories, there would always be concurrent things. There was no doubt she was just energetic about life. She championed people. She was passionately involved, optimistic, kind. Her creativity made things always better. And her presence was not only noticed, but always made a huge difference. And I will say, as we are here today, I do know that those things that we love the most are clearer in their absence. Veronica came to the life of the university in the 80s and 90s. The Alumni Association was starting to build chapters across the country, and New York City was one of them. And as you would well know, Veronica and Leroy were there. And I have to admit to you, Leroy, I'm not sure that Veronica ever suspected that you were not a logo. Really. And as you would probably guess, Veronica, along with Leroy, made the chapter work. They supported it, they were part of the leadership. It endured because of their energy and some other alums in the area. Now, I was lucky because I served at the university as the executive director of the Alumni Association Alumni Relations Office. So I got to have a bird's eye view of Veronica's magic. And it was magic. She had a way of orchestrating people and conversations. And one of the things that, the activities that I observed her in, she was part of our National Board of Directors. She was part of the Chapter Leadership Council, and then when she moved here, she was part of our local committee. And what she would do so magnificently, she would come into a meeting, and she'd sort of set the stage. She'd put herself she'd set her things down, and then she would sort of create camaraderie in the meeting by going around and talking to everybody. Then the meeting would start, and she would listen real intently to what was being said and reflect about some of the thoughts. And then in the middle of the meeting, she would introduce an idea, a creative idea, which made people sort of jerk their head up and think about it. And then that would be dropped. But then at the end of the meeting, it was miraculous because her idea would surface to the top. Then everyone would think it was a great idea, and Veronica would smile. And it was over. And I watched her, and I thought, you know what it is about Veronica, is that she knows how to present for people to listen, and listen in a way that people would speak. And so she sort of conducted people in a way that was just fascinating, because she would applaud their sound or their ideas, if you will. Then she would orchestrate and blend it with her ideas. And then at the end, the sound was so much more harmonious and most certainly bigger and bolder than it ever would be. And what I loved about Veronica, there was two things. One is she was literally the most loyal person there could be to the University of New Mexico. She wore the school colors every day. Now, I was here at the university a long time, and no one ever did that. But she told me purposely she picked out cherry red as a lipstick. And she had that lipstick every day, and she was impeccably dressed, and she would wear accessories and other things that blended with our school colors. So she was ever in my heart. And the other thing, when you are head of an organization that does a whole lot of special events, you find that a lot of times people don't notice what goes into those events. They will thank the director. But my alumni relations staff loved Veronica because every time she went to a special event, the day after we would get an email from her, very long, thanking everybody for the event. And then she would go by name, even to our work studies and to the students that helped, and thank them particularly for the things that they did. And when you have someone with a spirit that understands and affirms others, it just creates this wonderful world for staff and everybody else. So I was ever appreciative of that. And then I will begin with not only did Veronica love life, but she really understood the essence of happiness. And there is a study, and I'm not sure maybe anybody read it, but it's a longitudinal study. 80 years. It started in 1939. It's still going on. To the tune of about $26 million. And there was one question asked in the research. What makes happiness? What's the secret of happiness and well-being? Now, I wish whoever did this study over the years would have interviewed Veronica a little bit earlier, or would interview her, because they would have spent the $26 million. Because all they had to do was ask one person. Does anyone know what the two factors is the secret of happiness? One guess. I'll tell you. This is easy. The first one is generosity, and the second one is relationships. And I would put love into that as well. And those who knew Veronica knows the generosity that she had and the spirit she had, and the purpose of life was always bigger than herself. And the adjectives that you would use to describe Veronica will all in line what it is to be generous. It's humbleness, it's trust, it's optimism, it's belief in possibilities. And Veronica literally, her mantra to those who are from organizations that she belonged to was always, what can I do? What do you need done? And there was never expectation that she wanted anything from them. She just believed in the giving heart. And then the other one is relationships. And I think everyone here knows what Veronica, her underlying theme of life was relationships. And in that, I think the reason she was so successful, I mean, if you look back in her life, she has friends that were junior high, high school, probably grade school. I shouldn't minimize her relationship lifeline. People in New York, and we are so glad that you all moved back to New Mexico. You could have lived any place. And you came and blessed us with Veronica and your talent and life, and we really appreciate it. I'll get off the topic. These are the things that made Veronica so popular and good with relationships. She was authentic. She was genuine. She didn't take herself too seriously. She had a sense of fun. And more importantly, she loved deeply. And those who were fortunate to have her involved in organizations, and those who were fortunate to professionally know her, and those who were had a personal relationship with her, she just reflected radiance and love. And we will, I know, miss the presence of her in an enormous way, because she always just made things better. And in ending, I shouldn't do this with a musical group and other people, but I took the license, well, let me say I took the liberty to change the verse of one of my favorite songs. It's a Broadway musical, and it's called For Good, and it's the third verse, and it goes, just with a little bit of it. Veronica, if it is to be that we will not meet again in this lifetime, so much of us is made from what we learned from you. You'll be with us like a heartprint on our heart. And now, whatever way our stories end, you have written ours, because you were our friend.
Thank you, Dr. Abraham. That was quite beautiful. How to sum up Veronica, that's not an easy task. Now, Charles McKay, the longtime general director of the Santa Fe Opera, had planned to be with us here today, but a family situation forced him to cancel. But I can share a little of his and Veronica's early involvement with the Santa Fe Opera with you. She and Charles started out at the opera at about the same time. In 1968, she was a volunteer at a costume shop, and he was working in the car park as a pit boy and as an extra horn player when needed. They bumped into one another in the car park, not literally, one hopes, and from that moment became firm friends for many years. A few years later, Dan Rice, director of the Apprentice program, invited Veronica to direct the Apprentice scenes, an annual highlight of the opera season. She said she'd think about it, got in her car and drove off. Once on the hill down from the opera, she decided, of course I'll do this. But because she could not turn her car around on that narrow road in those days, she backed up the entire road to tell Dan, yes, I'll do it. She directed the apprentice program for 7 years in the 1970s. Now let me read you a piece that was read at Veronica and Leroy's marriage in 1984. They were in New York that day. Leroy sang on Messiah at St. Bartholomew's in the early afternoon. The wedding was to follow on the other side of town. There was a terrible storm that afternoon, and no cabs, of course. So Veronica and Leroy took the bus to their wedding, barely making it to the church on time. So I would like to read you the words from the call that was recited at that time again today. The call comes from 5 mystical songs by Vaughan Williams, and the poetry is by George Herbert. Come my way, my truth, my life, such a way as gives us breath, such a truth as ends all strife, such a life as killeth death. Come, my light, my feast, my strength, such a light as shows a feast, such a feast as mends in length, such a strength as makes his guest. Come, my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can move, such a love as none can part, such a heart as joys in love. Leroy asked me to read you another poem called In Terra Pax, a piece by Gerald Finzi, set to words by Robert Bridges. In connection with this piece, Leroy shared with me a very touching moment which I'd like to share with you. Quote, as I sat on the patio late last night with the slight breeze and the wonderful peacefulness, I was reminded that Veronica, even though she was a person who often exuded such energy, treasured the peace and quiet of our late evenings on the patio. I mention it because the final words and music of the Finzi reflect the way she would say, it's so quiet, which will always remain a fond and personal memory for me. Here are the words then of In Terra Pax, which will be followed by a recording of the music conducted by Philip Brunel from a pro-arte recording. The singer, and I promise you I had to pry this out of him, is Leroy Nell. The recording will be followed by 2 minutes of silence. In Terra Pax. A frosty Christmas Eve when the stars were shining, fared I forth alone, where westward falls the hill. And from many a village in the watered valley, distant music reached me. Peals of bells ringing, the constellated sounds ran sprinkling on earth's floor, as the dark vault above with stars was spangled o'er. Then sped my thoughts to keep that first Christmas of all, when the shepherds watching by their folds ere the dawn heard the music in the fields, and marveling, could not tell whether it were angels or the bright stars singing. But to me heard afar it was starry music, angel song, comforting as the comfort of Christ when he spake tenderly to his sorrowful flock. The old words came to me by the riches of time, mellowed and transfigured as I stood on a hill, hearkening in the aspect of the eternal silence, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. Thank you. have 2 minutes of silence.
Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you. I'm Shelley Block, a friend of Veronica and Roy's, but I'm also president of the Santa Fe Opera Guild. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity Roy gave me, asking me to say something on behalf of Veronica today. And I'm representing all of us in the guild. First of all, I have a quote from Anise Nin, and it goes like this. People living deeply have no fear of death. And I thought this was fitting for Veronica. She was fearless, she was wonderful, and she lived life to the fullest. And I'm sad to say I only knew her for maybe 6 years. I'm not trying to get emotional, sorry. I only got to know her for 6 years when I really got active with the guild. And I'll never forget walking into the first committee meeting and Veronica was there. And I'll never forget being in awe of this woman who had knowledge of the opera that was amazing. And I love opera, but I'm no expert. And I just listened to every word and hung on to what Veronica had to say. Oh, she loved everything about the opera, as we all know. And she was easy to share her talents with us and really enhance what we did with the guild. Doing so, she was a natural teacher, and she would share her experiences with us and guide us in a lot of the events we did. And she and Roy, luckily, attended, I can't remember a time she didn't attend a guild event, nor did I attend a time when they never volunteered, thank you. But she and Roy shared their experiences with us. So we were able to appreciate the opera a lot more. And I literally felt like I was one of her groupies because I listened to every word she said. And, I talk about events. One of the greatest events we did, of course, we all know Veronica had a myriad of contacts, she and Roy. And she was so generous with them. She would pick up the phone and call somebody at the university or somebody in the opera world. And they always answered her call, wherever they were in the world. And they would graciously do whatever Veronica requested to help us put on events. Of course, then we went virtual. And we all know Veronica hated the virtual world. But you know what? She never missed one of our meetings. And I'm really gonna miss her smiling face and Leroy bringing her cup of coffee onto the beautiful patio, and she always smiled. And that was Veronica. I kind of dread when we do a live event because this will be the first time Veronica won't be there with us. She really helped guide us, and her last gift to the guild was getting their good friend, opera legend Samuel Rainey, to do an event for us. And we wouldn't have been able to do it without Veronica and Roy's help. And over 150 people attended virtually from all over the world and the United States. That was Veronica. And as Dr. Abraham mentioned, she could orchestrate. And to get these performers willingly do Sesame Street was pretty amazing. But that, again, was Veronica. So I'll wind down. And as Karen mentioned, Veronica was so humble. She in a way would volunteer for every event we did, which, sorry, but not everybody does that for us. And she was always there. And if she was volunteering for the registration table, I wanted to be with her because she would share her experiences with us. And especially when I was new to the group, she'd introduce me to all the members and tell me stories. And it was always fun with Veronica. And she was always there early. And I remember we did an event in Los Alamos in line with the opera of Dr. Tommy. And I remember getting there, what I thought was really early. Well, guess who drove in right behind me? Leroy and Veronica. And I'm sure we're all going to miss those times. And I already do. So on behalf of the Santa Fe Opera Guild, and some of you are here, thank you. And we will offer our heartfelt condolences to Leroy and the family and the friends that are here. So thank you very much.
And now,
Santa Barbara's
Adele.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I've never heard a ballad played so beautifully. When my time comes, I want all of this music perfectly with these musicians. And now a reading from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a theologian, a German Lutheran pastor famous for his writings. He died at the age of 39 at the hands of the Nazis at the end of World War II in 1945. Here are his words on death and grieving. Nothing can make up for the absence of someone whom we love, and it would be wrong to try to find a substitute. We must simply hold out and see it through. That sounds very hard at first, but at the same time it's a great consolation, for the gap, as long as it remains unfilled, preserves the bonds between us. It is nonsense to say that God fills the gap. God does not fill it, but on the contrary, it remains empty and so helps us keep alive our former communion with each other, even at the cost of pain. The dearer and richer our memories, the more difficult the separation. But gratitude changes the pangs of memory into a tranquil joy. The beauties of the past are born, not as a thorn in the flesh, but as a precious gift in themselves. We must take care not to wallow in our memories or hand ourselves over to them, just as we do not gaze all the time at a valuable present, but only at special times. And apart from these, keep it simply as a hidden treasure that is ours for certain. In this way, the past gives us lasting joy and strength. And others words, thank you, Veronica, for sharing those. Now, at this point, we thought it might be nice if any of you would like to say a few words for Veronica, to Veronica, about Veronica, and maybe come up here to say it so that we can hear you. Who would like to? Yes, please. I'll have you each introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie. I am a friend of Veronica's, and I cannot say anything about her if it's not already been said. So I will instead simply, very quickly, say what it was she gave that changed my life, and the ways in which she did it with generosity and with heartfelt sentiment. First of all, I would say, like so many of us here, Veronica and I had known one another for a long time. We first met when we were in junior high school. We went to high school together. We went to the University of New Mexico together. And then we kind of went our separate ways in various academic pursuits. But one day, like many of you, I got a call from Veronica. And what she said was, gee, you're living in New Jersey and I'm living in New York, and we're just starting this New York, New Jersey, UAL alumni chapter. And so from that moment on, whether I lived in New Jersey or whether I lived in Florida, I had season tickets to the Metropolitan Opera. Veronica and I would do UNM things and opera things together. We lunched in Manhattan. We were saddened by the closure of Vince and Eddie's restaurant, where with Leroy and with my husband, where we ate heartily in front of the fireplace on several occasions. Most of all, Veronica opened my eyes to new kinds of joy and to the appreciation of things I had never entertained participating in or being a part of. Therefore, what I have to say is that most of all, she helped me develop an appreciation for and a receptivity to what was new, whether it was in art or whether it was in music or whether it was something else. Whereas my temptation as the child of a very strict Methodist Louisiana mother, if it was more than or less than 75 years old, it probably wasn't worth doing, listening to, or looking at. And Veronica opened my eyes to new ways to look at those things. And one of the ways she did it was, I have to tell you this one story, was I had heard many things about contemporary art and modern art, and I'd heard a lot about going to see various glass blowing sculptures and that kind of thing. But then I had heard a lot about the kind of living art of Christus and Jean-Claude. And she said to me, you know, they're going to be installing a show in Central Park. As I said to somebody, well, all right, we're going to have all these golden banners hanging down in Central Park. All you're going to do is put a sun in the middle of it, and it'll be like moving New Mexico, right into Manhattan. But that wasn't it. So she insisted that we walk that installation. And from the moment we started, when I went in as the skeptic, to the moment we stepped out, I was transformed by the power of that particular kind of art. And it was because she urged me, because she took me by the hand and led me through the exhibition. It was because she said, we will do this, and we will be glad we have done this. So it was with great humility and gratitude that I then was able to follow her direction many other times. I would listen to a different piece of music, I would view a different piece of art, I would read a different author. And yes, once in a while I would sample a new food. Not all the time, because as we get older, we're very set in our ways, and there's some things you just don't change. All of those other things you can change. Maybe, learning to like a raw oyster is not something that anybody can ever convince a New Mexico desert rat to do, even if she has lived in New England for a period of time. So, I'm here this afternoon not only to help Lori remember, but for all of the things I heard all of the years about Robin and Dana, and particularly when I lived for a while right outside of Boston and was fairly close to Pembroke, where Dana lived, and we would then, Veronica and I would trade stories about how she wasn't ashamed of children never met. And of course, that was my son off in South Africa and other places. But nevertheless, I hope that all of those young people inherited a sense of exploration and a sense of joy and the amazement that comes with discovering a new art form, a new way of looking at the world, and most of all, not a new friend, but cherishing the newness of an old friendship. So thank you very much.
And yes, it's easier for me to get up here with this than it is for you to watch me hobble up.
So, yes, please, then, would you come and say some words and have for us? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dana, and I was Veronica's eldest child. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. Well, Lloyd, my darling sister, my wife of 30 years and two beautiful children. I'd like to take a moment to share just a couple of memories from my perspective as a child. I was born in Albuquerque, but as was alluded to earlier, when I was about 3 years old, my father took a position at Dartmouth College. We moved to a small town in Vermont, Norwich, Vermont. Our phone number was 8. I took the bus to elementary school in those days.
but I remember it must have been probably in the 4th grade. My mother came to pick me up at school. She got out of the car, I think she had to carry my French form. And one of my classmates said, "Is that your mother?" "She's beautiful." My response was, "She's not beautiful, she's my mother." I knew of her support for the arts firsthand. As a teenager, I had developed a magic show, and I was engaged all over New England for the most part. And my mother, being the support of the arts, even back then, would help me load a 1972 Grand Torino station wagon with all my equipment, much of which was my grandfather's inherited card table, my father's own stereo. And she would drive me to all these engagements, many of them hours away, and dozens of birthday parties locally. But I would always make her stay in the car. I was too embarrassed. Now I suspect she probably snuck in the back and witnessed, but she never told me how awful that was. I would appreciate that, because it didn't dissuade me from pursuing something that I very much enjoyed. But Vermont wasn't really the community for someone with a passion for opera. And it was isolating. She did the best that she could. She established a brown bag opera company, and she developed a program of about 45 minutes long that she would take to local corporate events. We'd set up in the cafeteria, and during the lunch hour, plus the brown paper bag, she would have performers. One of the selections was a aria from The Medium that was delivered to a young, adopted, deaf, mute boy named Toby. Where could she find a young man willing to sit there and keep his mouth shut and be sang to at close range by one of those powerful voices that she had on her staff? And there was no risk, because the character knew that anybody would ever have the risk of hearing me sing. In college, I would visit so she decided in 1980 that she needed to be in New York. That was her passion. I went off to college, but I would go to visit her in New York. And one day I was snooping around with her. Oh my God, can you believe what I found? It was a Sony Walkman. That was cool, I wanted it. Now my mother was not known for her technical acumen. I was impressed she had a Sony Walkman, so I asked her, "What are you doing with this?" It turns out that she had met a gentleman who had purchased it for her, so that while they were apart, they could exchange audio tapes, cassettes, through the mail. So, this guy sounds pretty cool, maybe be around for a minute. That gentleman was Roy. And the first opportunity I met him, I helped him very much. Life got complicated. I graduated from college, married my beautiful wife, was very busy with a career and raising 2 beautiful children. So I didn't get to see my mother sometimes I performed. A couple times. But I had always heard of all of her activities and her enthusiasm and affiliation with the guilds and Metropolitan Opera. I was kind of always impressed from afar, but I never really probably had a full appreciation of the full picture of who she was and what she meant to me. So I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you for sharing your stories. It's helped fill in a lot of the gaps and really bring to my attention how much she's cherished. I thank you all. So, I know she's not there watching me. Well, no, I didn't say watching over me necessarily, Because at some point, hopefully in the long distant future, when we meet again, I expect she will have accumulated a list of all the things I could have done better. And I look forward to that argument. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very special and too hard an act to follow. So I think if there are other people who would like to speak, if we could possibly do it because of the interest in time now, over the reception or after this, that would be wonderful. Because there's one more thing that Leroy wanted to share with all of you. It's the final part of the program, The Tenderland by Aaron Copland. This piece is rather special because it was music Veronica kept on her computer and played often. We will hear a section of the work that she so loved, with Leroy singing the role of Grandpa. The context is this. Two drifters, Tom and Martin, arrive at the farm of Grandpa. You're going to get another lecture from me, whichever way you look at it, I'm afraid. And then the two drifters arrive in the Midwest in the 1930s. They're going to help with the farms. Grandpa tells the man, "Come on, I'll show you where to put your bundles. You're going to sleep over there. It promises to be a fine night," which is the best cue I've ever heard for an aria. It happens at that point. The men sing of the land and the harvest, and here are some of the words before we hear the music. Grandpa, "For many a year I've known this field and know all the work that makes it yield. Are you ready to lend a hand?" Talk. "I'm ready to work. I'll lend a hand." Grandpa, "By working together we'll bring in the harvest, the blessings of the harvest." Martin, "We'll plant each row with seeds of grain, and Providence sends us sun and rain." Grandpa, "We plow and plant each row with seeds of grain, by lending a hand, by lending an arm." This is so appropriate for Veronica, yes, it's such a wonderful moment of hope, I think, moving forward. Bring out to the land, bring the blessings of the harvest. And then this recitative or dialogue leads into the Act 1 finale, which is a quintet, with Laurie, the daughter, Ma, Top, Martin, and of course Grandpa. "Let us be joyful, let us be grateful, come join us in blessing. The Lord, thanks to the Lord for his blessing. Give thanks there was sunshine, give thanks there was rain, give thanks we are here to deliver the grain. Let us be joyful, let us be grateful. The promise of ending in right understanding is peace in our hearts and peace with our neighbor. Let us sing our song and let our song be heard. Let us sing with our hearts and find promise in that song. The promise of living, the promise of growing, the promise of ending is labor, sharing, and loving." Now, before I play you this excerpt, there's a great little showbiz anecdote that I didn't warn Leroy I was going to share with you in connection with this piece. At one point, he told me that Grandpa enters from the field singing, "Hello, hello." The director stopped him in rehearsal and said his voice was far too much. Could he please move upstage and sing again? So he did, sang "Hello, hello." But this was still too loud, so the director suggested going to the very back of the stage, or by the back of the theatre, for the line, but finally he could back up no further and was practically out in the street, when one stagehand turned to another and said, "This guy has no offstage." I love that story. So now finally, let's hear from Veronica's laptop, The Tenderland, from our Virgin Classics recording with Philip Brunel conducting and Leroy singing Grandpa. Thank you. So we come to the end of this celebration for Veronica Reed. One last thought, a prompt that came to me very clearly, very early yesterday morning, that I should express the hope and awareness that Veronica will continue to be with you, Leroy, when you sit on your patio in the quiet hours, when the veil is thin between the world of now and the hereafter. Now you might like to pay respects to Veronica before leaving, and please sign the guest book. And if you'd like to make a gift in her memory, you could contribute to the Veronica Memorial Scholarship at UNN's Studies in Opera. You could contact the Opera Department, I'm sure, for details. So thank you all for being here. Special thanks to David Felberg and these marvelous musicians. Thank you. To Amanda French Funerals, Laurel Nedrick for setting up and running the sound production for Horla. Thank you to everyone involved, to Karen and Shelley for speaking also. So now on behalf of Leroy and the family, you are invited to a reception from 3 to 5 p.m. If you get your foot down, you might make it maybe by 3. Yes. You'll find Cosmos at 1715 5th Street. Leroy says, go west on Loomis, turn right into 5th Street, go north for 10 blocks, and there it is. But we'd love to see you there and continue to share stories of Veronica there with you. We'll see you there. Thank you again for being here, everyone. Thank you.